Well, last week we told you all about the players we want to pick in the early rounds and how those can define your draft, but the players that can win you your league are right here in the middle rounds. So today, Dave Kluge and I are going to look at rounds 5 through 8, and we're going to go through, find the players that we like the most from these rounds. Some of them, honestly, we're kind of cheating, Dave. We're going with players that we want to take even a round earlier. This is going to be an exciting one to jump into.
Yeah, absolutely. And ADP changes quickly this time of
Yeah.
year. I mean, I'm doing a lot of drafts, and there are some guys that you're just seeing regularly because we get some good camp buzz that are going 2, 3 rounds ahead of ADP. And it takes time for more drafts to come in before ADP really does change. So, yeah, like one of the guys you talked about right now showing an ADP in round 8, but in the last like 12 drafts that I've done, he's gone in round 6. And we do see that a lot this time of year. We kind of build up, as our friend Chris Harris likes to say, this mind palace of how we think the NFL season is going to shake out, and then training camp opens and we're like, wait, that guy that I really liked is stuck on the third team, and this guy that I was fading is now practicing with the ones and looking really good. So it's a delicate balance of like being reactive and staying stuck in your process, but if you aren't adapting somewhat to all of this news we're getting for training camp
Right.
right now, you're just going to get left in the dust.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. That's why I think like it might sound weird when you see us go from like earlier back in like May or June, we had a player ranked at one spot, and now they're up 10 or 11 spots, or they're down 10 or 11 spots. That's just how this goes. ADP rankings, they're all a living, breathing thing that we're going to change. And Dave, today what we're going to do is we're just going to go round by round. We're going to start in round 5. Each of us is going to list a player that we like in that range that we want to get as much of as we can. And then talk about why we are taking that player at that ADP or ahead of ADP. So why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Big shocker here. Jameson Williams is a guy that I'm going to talk about today. And this is one that I am just so bullish compared to the consensus. I've got him as my wide receiver 18. I think that we could just see him take a huge step forward in what is now technically his 4th year, but had a really tumultuous start to his NFL career. And I just look at what he did over the second half of last season. And of course, they were throwing the ball a lot, and there were a lot of people that were productive in this Lions offense. But just like a taste of what the potential upside could be for Jameson Williams over the second half of the season last year, 119 targets, 80, well, hold on, 17 game pace over the second half of the season. Let me clarify. 119 targets, 81 receptions, 1,309 yards, and 11 touchdowns. That would have been good enough to be the wide receiver 5 in fantasy last year. I mean, he was just on an absolute heater. And we know, he's got speed. That's what he was drafted for. But when you go back and watch what he did at Alabama, he was a much more well-rounded receiver. He isn't just somebody who is going to get behind defenses and rip off big plays. He can also make plays after the catch. He can catch balls across the middle of the field. And we started to see a little bit of that over the second half of last year. What we're hearing from John Morton, the new offensive coordinator in Detroit, is that he has diversified his route tree, that he's doing a lot more this year. And, I don't want to open up the Amon St. Brown discussion again, but it doesn't really take a lot. You shave 1, 2 targets per game from Amon St. Brown, and you put that in Jameson Williams' direction. He is a much more efficient player with the opportunities that he receives. He scores touchdowns at a higher rate. He can make more after the catch. He can catch balls deeper downfield. So it really doesn't take a lot. I'm not projecting that Jameson Williams takes over as the number one target earner in Detroit. We just need a little bit more volume to go his way for him to easily crack inside the top 20 receivers. And he's another guy right now that, we're talking rounds 5 through 8 in an NFFC high stakes draft that I did last night with Jeff Bell. He went early in round 4. He is a guy who is also starting to move up draft boards. So if you can get him in round 5, he is an auto click for me, but I'm okay even taking him in round 4 if I want.
Oh, okay. I like that. I like that. Yeah, with Jameson, I think we're definitely seeing an upward trend with him. He's a player that I really loved coming out of college. And I mean, I'm just slightly lower than you. You have him at wide receiver 18. I have him at wide receiver 21. Consensus average draft position though has him at wide receiver 25. And I'm wondering if that's going to go up as we get closer to drafts, but it's not like there's a whole lot of new news that should come out of Lions camp that would push him up or down. So
It would
I
have to be
do
an
have a
Amon
feeling.
St. Brown injury is the only way that he's like
Well,
moving up.
we
Like
don't
these,
say those things, Dave.
well,
That's
I'm
like
just saying
a
that's how it's going to move because you do at a certain point, like at this time of year, we see like the big changes are like the RB2 battles or the guys that are on the wide receiver 3 bubble, like who's getting into those 3
rookies.
wide
Yeah.
receiver. Right. But we kind of see like for the most part, these first like 6 rounds pretty entrenched in ADP. And I think the
Yep.
one big mover that we've seen is Amari Hampton, and that's because Najee Harris had that 4th of July incident. But outside of that, players do kind of stay where they are at this point in the year.
Yeah, and that's why like I don't think we're going to see him move much at all here. But I mean, you and I being above consensus on him means we're probably going to be taking him here in this fifth round, like you said, sometimes even the fourth round. Like it does happen, and that's where I'm at with the next player that I want to talk about here, and it's Tetairoa McMillan, the wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers. And Dave, we both, it's weird. We did not check this prior to it, but like we both have him at wide receiver 19, despite his consensus average draft position being insanely low at wide receiver 28. And to me, this is just an egregious overcorrection from what we saw last year with Marvin Harrison Jr., where everyone was drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. way earlier. He was going in the second round as the wide receiver 9, and it was a massive disappointment for everybody. Now we're talking about taking T-Mac in the fifth round as the wide receiver 28. You and I are happy taking him in the fourth round, taking him as the wide receiver 19, as a guy who can get a whole bunch of target volume. And that's the thing, is like, it's not just that the target volume is there, or could be there, excuse me, but history's just on his side. Guys that are picked 8th overall, top 10, top 12 wide receiver picks end up typically having good rookie seasons. Marvin Harrison Jr. was not a bad fantasy wide receiver by any stretch, but he was bad in comparison to where he got drafted. So that's the thing now. With Tetairoa McMillan, you're drafting him in the fifth round. There are going to be a lot of people that say, hey, I don't want him because he's got Bryce Young attached to him. Bryce Young isn't very good. Well, we talked about this a bunch of times over those final 6 weeks. Bryce Young was a totally different quarterback, man. He had the third highest ADOT. Like he was getting balls downfield, the most throws of 20 plus yards. He did this all while having more QB pressures than any other quarterback. So this was a guy who was just highly efficient, making big plays. Everything was clicking for him. He just didn't have the wide receivers that he needed to make bigger plays in this offense. And so now with Tetairoa McMillan being the guy that, I mean, listen, if we go back to 2023, Adam Thielen was the target leader for this team, around 130 targets. If McMillan can do that and be around 130 targets, we're talking about the same as Brian Thomas in his rookie year, Ladd McConkey in his rookie year. And if I go back and look last season at the players that earned 130 targets, all but one of those players were top 16 fantasy wide receivers. And the one who didn't make it was Wan'Dale Robinson. That is a very different type of player and a very different type of offensive situation. So if you're telling me that Tetairoa McMillan can even sniff 130 targets with the talent he has, with the ascending quarterback he has, honestly, he's way closer to being a top 15 wide receiver than where you and I even have him as a top 20 wide receiver. But for him to be drafted as a top 30 wide receiver just feels egregious at this point.
Yeah, and I'm willing to take him pretty aggressively, as my ranking would imply, as is yours. But I will say, digging into the Panthers beat a little bit, there is some concern. We see the highlights that hit social media all the time, and like he has had some spectacular highlights throughout camp. Just skying up and making these contested catches, and that's really what he does best. But there has been some reports that he's struggling a little bit when it comes to press man coverage, and they've got some good
I haven't seen
cornerbacks
that at
there
all.
in Carolina.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I can send you the links, and I talked to
Yeah.
a buddy of mine yesterday who covers the Carolina Panthers, and his exact quote, I don't want to put his name out there because he hasn't published this, but quote, he said, T-Mac still needs a lot of work. So I think that it's something that, especially late in the year, we could see him come on a little bit stronger, but he might get off to a slow start. I mean, they're asking a lot for him. He's going to be playing the same role that Mike Evans played and DK Metcalf played in this Dave Canales offense. I still think that he's a good player, and I'm betting on the talent. But I will say that some of the reports we've seen are pouring some cool water on that a little bit. But I think overall, I mean, Xavier Legette is healthy right now, and he looks fantastic. I don't know if you saw that play where he caught that little catch and run across the middle of the field out of the slot.
I mean,
Looked like he
yeah.
was shot out of a cannon. I think this is good for the entire offense, having a guy who can draw the defensive gravity. So I'm still very in on Tetairoa McMillan, but I do want to say that these Carolina beat reports and training camp reports that have been coming out are not scaring me too much, but definitely something to pay attention to as camp develops.
Yeah, I gotta say, I haven't seen a single negative camp report, so maybe I don't know. I'm probably not following all the same guys as you, but I haven't seen anything negative on him, which was like kind of surprising to hear that. The Xavier Legette thing, I think we know who Legette is. He probably has a better year if he's pushed into the slot. Um, we'll see what he ends up doing there. He also might be outside at the Z position as well. The thing you talked about where he made a nice play. I mean, yeah, we're going to get camp highlights, and I think it's going to be important not to let camp highlights sway us too far. It's the continuous drumbeat that we get from these guys, right? So if we get a continuous negative drumbeat on Tedero and McMillan as we get closer to the season, I think that'll have us changing our minds a little bit and changing the tune.
So here, I'll
But for
read
right
this. This
now,
this
yeah,
came from the training camp reports that we publish at Football Guys, and I forget exactly who's covering the Panthers. So I'm sorry to whoever put the work in here, but this is a direct quote. It says there were concerns about rookie wide receiver Tedero McMillan beating press coverage in the NFL, and those concerns were amplified during the first few days of practice. So that's the one thing that he's been struggling with. Like I said, not panicking
okay.
about it.
I
I
mean,
think he is a developmental player. He's got the skills that we want to see. The draft capital is obviously there. He's in a good role, but definitely something to pay attention to throughout camp.
yeah, and not to like push so much on it, but like it's going to be something where the tough part about reports is that it's always a reporter's view and someone relaying the reporter's view. And then on top of that, you get the cherry on top where it's like first couple of days. So let's see how these things continue to play out. That's why it's so important for us to get these contexts in these reports. Dave, before we move on, just want to remind everybody, we got a bunch of ways that people can enjoy this show. First is going to be right here on YouTube. So if you're watching, take a second to like this video, comment down below with your thoughts on the players you are targeting, ask us your questions. We'll let you know what we think, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss an episode. We've got 2 episodes this week. We're going to have more coming in the following week. And as we get into the season, we're going to have our regularly scheduled waivers and start sit shows. And we're going to be doing so much for you guys as we get closer and closer to the fantasy season and your fantasy football drafts. All right, I'll top into round 6 here, Dave, where each of us have another player. The one that you were going to talk about, I think, is really, really interesting because this can go, I mean, just crazy ends of the spectrum here with this player.
Yeah, Travis Hunter. I mean, it's just kind of crazy to me that people think that the Jags traded the 5th overall pick, their second rounder, their 4th rounder, and a future first round pick to make Travis Hunter this part-time offensive player. I mean, we know that like if you're just looking at positional value, a wide receiver is much more valuable than a cornerback. And I'm not putting any weight into preseason depth charts, but we did see that Travis Hunter was listed as a starting wide receiver and was listed as a third team defensive back.
Right.
And it sounds like he's been alternating practices, doing some practices with the offense, some practices with the defense. I like what Liam Cohen said is that they basically mapped out every single minute of Travis Hunter's training camp to make sure that they are maximizing the time that they have with him. But at the end of the day, I think this guy's going to be an offensive weapon. Like they made a huge splashy move to go out and get James Gladstone, a guy who has proven that he can help be a part of building a good offense. They brought in Liam Cohen, a very offensive minded head coach. And then they traded the farm to move up to get Travis Hunter, the guy coming off a Heisman Trophy. And of course, he can make plays on defense, but this team desperately needs a wide receiver too behind Brian Thomas Jr. And Travis Hunter is the perfect complementary skill set to run a high-low offense where you have Travis Hunter, very much so in the Chris Godwin role last year that made him a top 5 wide receiver, and then Brian Thomas Jr. in the Mike Evans role where he can get behind defenses and rip off these big plays and use his speed. So to me, it is just so very obvious that this offense is going to run through Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, but there are these concerns. I've heard people saying it that he's going to spend the majority of his time on defense or that he's only going to be playing 40-50% of the snaps on offense. I actually ran a poll from the Football Guys account not too long ago asking how many snaps they thought that Travis Hunter would be playing on offense. And the majority was 50 to 60%. We got a report from Liam Cohen this morning saying that he's expecting him to be out there for over 80% of the snaps. So I just think that there's a huge disconnect between what Travis Hunter is doing in training camp right now and how he is being drafted. All signs are pointing to him being a focal point of this offense. And really, it just sounds like this guy's got like an extra pair of lungs. So, like when the offense is taking a rest, he's with the defense. And when the defense is resting, he's practicing with the offense. I mean, this guy's conditioning is just off the charts. So, I think that he's going to surprise people with both his offensive and defensive snaps. But if he's out there for 80% of the snaps and what we know is going to be a pass heavy offense where he can be that underneath target playing out of the slot, my goodness, where he's going right now in round 6, he is completely overvalued. We're looking at a guy drafted 2nd overall. If he was getting an
Overvalued or
ADP in round,
undervalued?
sorry, undervalued.
Okay.
But with a guy going 2nd overall, if he's going to be a primary receiver on what we expect to be a good offense, this guy's ADP should be in round 3. And I think it's just this concern about how much he's going to play on defense or if he's able to stay fresh on offense. I think all of that has just been totally overblown. Travis Hunter, one of the easiest picks to make right now. I'd expect his ADP to creep up a little bit as we get more and more word that he's going to be more of an offensive player than a defensive player. But unless his ADP shoots up into round 3, I'm going to keep drafting him.
Interesting. Okay. So right now we have him listed as a round 6 player. Your ranking would suggest you have him closer to like a round 4 player.
Hmm.
Is that
Yep.
about right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me compare him to some other round 4 ADP guys. Travis
I'm
Hunter
looking.
or
I've got
Rashee
him
Rice?
46th overall.
Okay, well, number 46 overall in ADP is Rashee Rice.
Yeah.
So Rashee
I,
Rice or Travis Hunter?
I have Travis Hunter well ahead of Rashee Rice, about 2 rounds.
Oh wow. Okay, I'm not there. I still have Rashee Rice ahead. Cortland Sutton or Travis Hunter?
Yeah, not even close. I mean, I've got Travis Hunter. I can
Wow.
tell you right now, he's my wide receiver 22. It's Terry McLaurin and Mike Evans, who are guys that, like, honestly, I'm not really drafting. I feel like
Wow.
they have to go somewhere. It's
Okay.
Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Travis Hunter, Jalen Waddle, Xavier Worthy. That's where I've got him.
Now I have to look at this, Dave, because I'm concerned. You might be highest on him in the entire like industry.
It wouldn't surprise me. And I know, there have been a lot of people. He's a polarizing player, and I understand why he is polarizing. But we're looking at a guy that, like, I don't think I'm overselling it when I say he is a legitimate top 5 wide receiver
Oh
upside this
yeah.
year. We saw that role, like the slot receiver role in this Liam Cohen offense last year. We saw just how prolific and how valuable it was to Chris Godwin. Now we're looking at basically a supercharged Chris Godwin, a guy with like better conditioning, not coming off of an injury, 5 years younger. I just think the ceiling for Travis Hunter is so high. And I think even the floor, I mean, even if he doesn't pan out to be a top 5 guy, if he's getting 80% of the snaps and working out of the slot in this offense, his floor is basically top 36. So, I mean, we're looking at a relatively safe floor here. I'm just not buying into he's going to be a full time defensive player and only come in the mix on 40 to 50% of the offensive snaps. I don't think that's going to happen. That's not what it sounds like.
No, it doesn't. And it sounds like I mean, from what Liam Cohen said in passing in that press conference, he said, probably 80% of the offensive snaps. I think the question still remains is if he can get 80% of the offensive snaps, but then he's doing maybe like 40% of the defensive snaps. Obviously, how does that work out for everything? The NFL is a different animal. And so I think that's why everyone's approaching it with a little bit of cautious optimism. I think if there is something that helps him on the offensive side of the football, it's been Trevor Lawrence's reliability on first read targets and design plays. And that's something where Liam Cohen is good at designing screenplays. Travis Hunter is great on these screenplays. And that's where I expect his role to be in almost a very similar Rashee Rice-esque sort of role where he can get these slants underneath and run after the catch and get these easy screens and do a lot of the easy stuff underneath while Brian Thomas is able to take the top off. I do think that Thomas is going to end up leading the team in targets. I think we're going to have a very specific role for Travis Hunter. It's probably more likely that we see his ADP somewhere around like the wide receiver 26, 27 range, as opposed to where he's at right now, which is wide receiver 31. And I'm on this one. It's tough to take a stance for me right now. I'm pretty much exactly where ADP is. I've got him at wide receiver 31. And when I just started to look around at some of the other rankings, I was like, I can't really put him ahead of some of these other guys that I know are the wide receiver 1 for their team. And by the way, I looked it up. You are highest on Travis Hunter in the entire fantasy football industry.
Not
You are
afraid to take a
11 spots
stance.
ahead. Yep, you're 11 spots ahead of consensus rank on Travis Hunter there. So
Yeah, and I
take
just
your
I
flag,
see the
plant it.
upside. I'm just not scared off by this. I mean, even if he is on defense, like everything that I've read, and I get it's ridiculous how much time I spend reading training camp reports for every single team. Like, I'm embarrassed to admit how much I've done over the last few weeks, but like everybody has just commented on the fact that he doesn't get tired, that while other guys are out here like heaving and sweating and drinking water, he's doing individual drills on the sidelines, that this guy is just like conditioning off the charts. So I think there was some pause initially because we weren't sure what the splits would look like. But I'm starting to come around to this idea that even if he is playing 50, 60, 70% of the defensive snaps, he can still be a full time offensive player.
What's crazy is he is the guy that I think has the widest range of ranking right now and
Mhm.
looking online at consensus ranks. And I'm seeing him as low I mean, some of these are probably either outdated or just ridiculous. And I'm seeing like wide receiver 80 and stuff like that. But if I'm looking more realistic, I'm seeing as low as like wide receiver 47. And then, some guys got him as high as wide receiver 22. So there's a very wide range of outcome. And I think the more information we get as we get closer to the season, it's going to be a little bit easier to click that button when we get into drafts.
Right.
All right, next guy on here is a guy that I've talked about before, and it's Isaiah Pacheco, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. And Dave, I've got him at running back 23. You have tap danced your way all the way up to running back 19 with Isaiah Pacheco, which I'm sure we're going to hear about that. Consensus ADP has him at running back 26, and that ADP itself has gone up because he was closer to like running back 28 not too long ago. And so now this is a guy that's going in round 6. Dave, in our football guys Stafford League, you took him in, what was that, round 4, round 5?
Round 5, yeah. I was
Yeah.
picking like kind of at the turn. I had the third overall pick. So with DeAndre Swift and Isaiah Pacheco at the 4-5 turn, and really happy with that running back room.
Yeah, I mean, and have you seen how he looks? I know, like, we don't want to get too excited over training camp highlights, but my gosh, man, like he looks so explosive, so springy, like a guy that has fully recovered from his injury. He's running the way he looked like he did when he was a rookie, and everyone was like, "Oh man, he just runs violent. Like this dude just runs crazy." And on top of that, we're starting to see like different usage. There was the other day he had a 50-yard over the shoulder catch from Patrick Mahomes, which is just usage I don't think we've been used to. Now, I'm not going to say because we see one play in off-season training camp that all of a sudden, hey, that's the number 2 wide receiver on this team or something crazy like that. But this is a guy that we've seen him produce, man. He was a running back 14 in 2023. He was averaging an insane 21 opportunities per game to start the season last year before he gets hurt. And then honestly, I think we can just say it's a wash, everything that happens after that, because he comes back from a broken leg. The entire running back room was incredibly inefficient. They went up against a really tough stretch of run defenses there during that time. And the Chiefs offense just really didn't look like itself. There was no Rashee Rice. Travis Kelce was looking washed. Isaiah Pacheco was injured. You had an old Kareem Hunt in there. Like everything just looked bad. And I know there's been concerns about like, well, they bring in Brashard Smith and they bring in Elijah Mitchell. And honestly, those guys don't really scare me off. I mean, Brashard Smith's 7th round pick, who was a former wide receiver, who's honestly, for many, all intents and purposes, you're still learning the position of running back. So I'm not too worried about that. This is Isaiah Pacheco. I mean, averaging 5 yards per carry for his career. He's a workhorse kind of guy. He's nearing the end of his contract. This team is going to need to establish the run, especially if they're looking at a Rashee Rice suspension and having to rely solely on, let's say, a guy like Xavier Worthy to make plays, who he was inconsistent himself. So yeah, I'm leaning into Isaiah Pacheco actually being one of the guys who is secretly, the offense is going to be running through him for quite a bit.
Yeah, and I was notably a little bit lower on Isaiah Pacheco early in the preseason. But again, this is one of those just paying attention to what's happening in training camps right now. I was buying into the Brashard Smith hype, and it sounds like we might be getting Darwin Thompson again on this one because
Oh
everybody
my
likes
gosh.
him. You know, when you look at the
What a name.
super athletic guy on a good offense who can catch passes, of course, people are going to get reasonably excited about it. But like you said, he's still learning the position. And that's something that he said. Like there was a quote that came out a few days ago where he said, you know, it's just still learning the position. He's struggling to pick up the pass protection. The game's moving a little bit fast for him right now. So I think long term, we could see Brashard Smith potentially develop, you know, a good taxi stash in your dynasty leagues. But Kareem Hunt, I mean, I couldn't care less about Kareem Hunt at this point. I mean, he had a couple of nice games before he just fell off the age cliff last year. I think that he's going to be there as kind of a backup role, a guy who knows the offense and can come in and move the pile every now and then. But it sounds like all of this work is going to Isaiah Pacheco again this year. He is 100% recovered from the foot injury that really zapped his efficiency last year. And I can look at the efficiency metrics over the last few years and the EPA and all the nerdy data, but sometimes it just doesn't matter. I mean, I'm looking at Isaiah Pacheco in a similar light to how I'm looking at Kyron Williams, where we just have to ignore the efficiency metrics and realize that he has the faith of the coach. And that is one of the most important things out there right now, that you can stay on the field for passing downs and be that pass blocker if they need him to be. He can run between the tackles. He can run outside. He's a well-rounded guy on a good offense, and sometimes it's just as simple as that. So a guy that I've moved way, way up my rankings, and Rashard Smith is now just kind of off my radar as that guy I was regularly taking in round 18, 19, 20 as kind of a late round dart throw. Now I've kind of pivoted off of Brashard Smith, and I'm looking at some other options late in drafts.
And ADP has jumped for Isaiah Pacheco over the last couple of weeks here. So over the last, let's call it 3 weeks, the last few weeks, he went from being pick 78 to now we've seen him as high as pick 62. So we're talking about a big, like almost round and a
Pick
half jump for
52
Isaiah
in our
Pacheco.
football guys draft last night.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like I think that's probably where people are going to have to take him. Like I know we've got him, and that's the thing is like if you decide that you want these players, we can give you all the advice. But when you decide that you want to go after these players, a lot of times you can't necessarily wait for them to fall to you in those rounds. If they do, that's great. But if you're looking at Isaiah Pacheco and he's there in round 5, and it's kind of like how you said, Dave, you're on the turn and you're not sure if he's going to come back to you in 4 or 5 picks, just take the player right there. Like don't you shouldn't care about, oh, ADP says he's going to drop to the next round. He probably doesn't. And then can you live with yourself if that guy, if you miss out on that pick? Like that's how I tend to look at these
nothing
things.
worse when you're drafting from the edges, trying to play the ADP game. Just don't do it. I mean, what I do when I'm drafting from the edges, so when I'm picking at that 4-5 turn, I look at what pick number I have coming up at the
Mhm.
6-7 turn, and any player that is below that 6-7 ADP is on my radar for the 4-5 turn. I mean, that's just how you should be playing it. If you're trying to squeeze the best value you can out of the turn, you're going to miss out on all the players that you want to draft.
Yeah, I've never heard someone say, "Man, I've regretted taking the guy I wanted at the pick that I had." Everyone
Uh,
always says like,
I
"I,
reached for Toby Gerhardt about 8 years ago, and I still lose sleep over
well,
it.
that's you. You're an idiot." I'm just kidding. All right, so we're gonna move on here to our next round. We got round 7 and round 8 coming up, but before we do that, guys, I want to let you know about something that really cool that we've got going on over here at Football Guys, and it is the Football Guys Bowl. Last season, we announced the inaugural season of the Football Guys Bowl, and it's our Mega League tournament exclusively for Football Guys premium subscribers. Premium subscribers is anyone with a Pro, Elite, Hall of Fame, or GOAT tier membership, and these subscribers get placed into 12-team leagues. They go head-to-head all season for the glory of being crowned the Football Guys Bowl champion. This year, we've brought everything back, and it's only for subscribers. So make sure, if you want to be in this, you become a Football Guys premium subscriber. It is so simple. On top of getting access to the Football Guys Bowl, you're going to get all of our powerful tools that we have on the Football Guys website, our draft kits, our rankings, in-season support. There's so much that comes with it. And Dave, you and I know how much this is. It's $3.99 a month. It is as low as $3.99 a month for a pro subscription to Football Guys. It is that simple. We're going to have the link in the description of this episode down below. So if you not only want to win your fantasy football league, but join the Football Guys Bowl and win that, go ahead and become a Football Guys subscriber today.
And we
All right.
probably should have talked about this pre-show, but I believe last year we had the winner of the Football Guys Bowl come on the show for a podcast
We
appearance, right?
did.
We're
Yes,
going to do that again?
we did. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, of course we're going to do
Yeah,
it
sure.
again.
Why not? Yeah. So all the more reason to sign up. If you win the Football Guys Bowl, you get to join us on this show.
Tell us how stupid we are. It's great. It's awesome. All right. Or you can just do that in the comments. Either way, it's fine. All right. Round 7 here, David. Who you got?
Stefan Diggs. And I'm just going to get ahead of it because I know you're going to look it up because I am egregiously high on Stefan Diggs. But of all of the industry rankers, Alfredo Brown, you, Jeff Bell, and myself are 3 of the 4 highest rankers on Stefan Diggs. So it's not just me, it's not just you, and it's not just Jeff Bell. All of us have, through some sort of osmosis this offseason, have all become in on Stefan Diggs. And I'm going to chalk this up to Adam Hutchison because he has been pounding the table for Stefan Diggs for months now. And I'll admit, there was a point in the offseason where I was like, 31-year-old coming off a torn ACL, not really in. And Adam just kept saying, this is a very clean injury. You look at the archetype of receiver he is, a guy who wins on finesse and technical prowess more than he does on his athleticism. These are the types of guys that bounce back from this injury. And sure enough, training camp opens and they just immediately are like, well, Stefan Diggs is a full go and he's going to be ready for week 1. And it's like nobody even cares that like we are getting so much good word from like we see him chasing a puppy around on the field. You can't do that if you're rehabbing a torn ACL. He looks good. The Patriots gave him $65 million. We saw what Stefan Diggs did in aiding Josh Allen's development as a quarterback. I think he's going to have a very similar role with Drake May. And I also like Demario Douglas a lot. When we're talking about our late round targets, I'm sure I'm going to talk about Demario Douglas. But right now, where he is going, Stefan Diggs off the board in round 7, one of the easiest draft picks out there. And again, the NFFC draft that I did last night with Jeff Bell, we reached very aggressively for Stefan Diggs because I said, I don't want to risk the chance of playing the ADP game and hope he makes it back to us. Let's just take him in round 6 and not even have to worry about it. And we were both happy to make that decision. Last year, before he tore his ACL, he was the wide receiver 9 in half PPR leagues. I mean, he was the number one guy. And granted, Nico Collins was dealing with an injury during that time, but he was very much so. CJ Stroud's number one receiver. He was Josh Allen's number one receiver for years. Now he's going to be Drake May's number one receiver. I think we're just overthinking this. This is a guy who's on a pretty soft wide receiver room and what we expect to be an ascending offense, getting paid a lot of money. And the concerns about his ACL, we shouldn't be thinking about that because he's a full go right now. He's going to be a full go for week 1. I've got him as my wide receiver 24, and his consensus ranking, Alfredo, I'm sure you've got it available, but I know he's like
Yep.
wide receiver 40 something, right?
Consensus ranking here has him as a wide receiver 40. Yes.
Yeah.
And
So
you
just huge
and Jeff
mispraise.
and I are much higher.
Yes, yes. And shout out Adam Hutchison. He has been getting his flowers nonstop from me this offseason. But yeah, just always ahead of the curve on the injury stuff. He was telling me, get Stefan Diggs, don't draft Chris Godwin. And then sure enough, there was a point in time where Chris Godwin was getting drafted ahead of Stefan Diggs in fantasy
Yeah.
drafts. And then we get word that Chris Godwin, second procedure on his ankle, might not be ready for week 1, might miss a handful of games. Meanwhile, Stefan Diggs is out here just tearing it up in camp, and it still is balancing out in ADP. So he's one of those guys right now that I'm A-OK just reaching a couple rounds ahead of and trying to get him on every team.
Yeah, Adam Hutchison has been sort of the cheat code for us here of understanding these injuries and how to look at them, especially with these wide receiver spots. By the way, I was in the Flex League draft this last weekend in New York with a bunch of people from the industry, like guys that do this for a living. Stefan Diggs still fell to the 8th round. And I had my option there of taking Stefan Diggs or Brandon Ayuk because of my build. And I'm not super happy of the way I did this, but I had Trevion Henderson already. And I didn't want to invest too many pieces into the Patriots offense. So I went with Ayuk. But Diggs ended up going 3 picks later. And I had been sitting there thinking, man, I could take Stefan Diggs in the 6th round. Oh, I could take Stefan Diggs in the 7th round. We got to the 8th round and I still didn't do it. And it is one of those things where like I regret not doing that. And I think that's a perfect example of you could see a player who you think deserves to go much higher fall later. And I probably got in my own head about the build there. But yeah, man,
I got
Jeff
Brandon
Bell.
Ayuk as my wide receiver 57. I am scared
Why?
about that injury because
Why?
he's not practicing yet. It sounds like he could potentially start the season
Adam
on
has said
top.
that he's fine though.
He's changed his tune a little bit. That's what he was saying a couple of months
Oh,
ago.
the
Now he's
heck.
getting a little bit concerned with him being unable to
Adam, you
practice
got to
and some of
text
the
me, man. You got to text me
yeah.
before I do drafts.
Yeah, he was
Freaking
very in on
Adam.
Ayuk a couple of months ago, but has started to change his tune since camp open. The exact quote that he gave when he joined me on the launch pad was, "I'm not getting the warm and fuzzies on Brandon Ayuk," and he doesn't know if this is contract related or
I
what it is.
tagged
But
him
he,
after I made that pick. I was like, thanks to Adam Hutchison. And he gave me like the thumbs up and everything. I DM'd him. He's like, good, man. Now, you know what, Adam? I'm gonna DM you right now. That's I'm about to sorry Joe here on the
so what he
episode.
said was that like the data says that Brandon Ayuk should be healthy because Brandon Ayuk kind of fits in that same bucket as Stephon Diggs, a guy who isn't a field stretcher, a guy who is more of a route running wide receiver. So he said the data suggests that Brandon Ayuk should be ready, but whether it's contract related or I don't know, man. Am I crazy in thinking that like Kyle Shanahan and Brandon Ayuk just hate each other? Like they have such a
I
weird
don't know.
tumultuous relationship with each other. We've seen
But
Brandon Ayuk get
why
like
do you pay him
benched for no
then?
reasons.
Like, what do you like? Honestly, we've seen coaches and players hate each other. We've seen like teams and players just not gel. Like, why play them and keep them around?
That's what I don't
Like, what
understand.
are
Like he's demanded a trade. We remember it, that 2021 season where everyone like Brandon Ayuk coming off a red hot second half of his rookie year. Everybody had just assumed Brandon Ayuk was going to be the wide receiver 1, and he had him just running little decoy routes off to himself while they like built a game plan around Debo
I,
Samuel. It's just a weird relationship there. So yeah, I remember that quote from Adam. He said, "I'm not getting the warm and fuzzies," and that's just like in the back of my mind every time I'm looking at Brandon Ayuk on a draft board.
never mind, everybody. Don't go follow Adam Hutchison. This is a very anti Adam Hutchison podcast now. By the way, Jeff Bell, you and I being the 3 of the 4 highest people on Stefan Diggs, each of us, and like, we don't do this often. Like we never like try to pat ourselves in the back here, but each of us were top 20 in accuracy. Jeff Bell was one of the most accurate fantasy analyst when it came to ranking wide receivers last year. That is something that he has been especially good at, and he is highest on Stefan Diggs. So I think that should tell everybody what they need to know when it comes to this player. All right, Dave. Next guy I've got on here, Ricky Pierol, wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. And I told you ahead of time I was going to cheat a little bit because Pierol, by ADP, average draft position, he's going in round 8, but I wanted to put him in round 7 here because I just don't think you're going to get him in round 8. And then your response was he's going in round 6 in a bunch of the drafts that I'm in.
I mean, the same thing, the draft that I did last night, that NFFC one, where I think these players, the high stakes drafters, are much more reactive and adaptive to news. On Underdog, I hate to say it, but it's just a bunch of sheep following an ADP over there. Like, you can basically guess what the next 10 picks are going to be. Everybody is drafting off of ADP. On these high stakes leagues where people are paying $350 to $1,800 per buy-in, they're going to put a little bit more thought in those picks. And you see Ricky Pierol is consistently going in round 6 in those drafts.
Yeah, man, I'm looking right here. The Flex League draft I referenced before, Ricky Pierol went at the 6'10".
And I
So
believe
yeah,
you took him in round 6 last night in our football guy
yeah,
in our football
yeah.
guys league. Yeah, and I was thinking about taking him over Isaiah Pacheco in the 5th.
Yeah, I'm just like I'm seeing that ADP continue to creep up, and I think a lot of it has to do with, I mean, people are understanding the context of last year. Like, you kind of have to throw away last year and how it was. The guy gets shot before the season. He comes back a little bit slower. He gets put into this role where they're like, "Hey, man, we just want to get you on the field and get the ball in your hands. Let's do sort of like a gadgety type of thing with Deebo Samuel being out. Let's get you into a similar role." And he had done a lot of that stuff too at Florida, where he was running the ball and taking the ball in end arounds and being the motion guy and a lot of things. But like now, Dave, looking at the situation in San Francisco, you've got Jawan Jennings, who wants a new contract and to be traded, or to be traded,
And has a
excuse me.
calf injury.
And
Yeah.
and there's a calf injury. And then Kyle Shanahan was asked about that, where he was asked, "Is it a calf injury or a holdout?" And his response was, "You can ask him that. He tells me it's a calf, and the calf shows, but we're going to be delicate with those calves."
hmm This is the same
Okay.
calf that he injured in OTAs as well. So re-injury is never a good thing. And then, like we
Yeah.
said, not getting the warm and fuzzies on Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, so if there's no warm and fuzzies on Brandon Ayuk, thanks for that. If there's no warm and fuzzies there, if we're talking about Jawan Jennings having a continuous soft tissue injury here in the offseason, and I hate to say it, but like there's still enough concern there with Christian McCaffrey and the Achilles tendonitis. Yeah, you see, now I've moved away from Adam and I was talking to my guy, Dr. Vignesh Doraiswamy, who he has said, yeah, he could probably play, but there is still heavy risk there, especially with taking him in the first round. Like, this is not something that just goes away. It's going to be about McCaffrey being able to deal with the pain, and can he play through that pain? So that's something that does worry me. But if you're talking about all these guys that have either injury or contract issues, and Ricky Pierol and George Kittle are the last two guys sort of standing for San Francisco, I am about that. I'm about that, and I like being able to take Ricky Pierol here as potentially the number one wide receiver in San Francisco at this discount that we have here, where, Dave, I know ADP is still behind, but it wouldn't surprise me if people are going to be, especially in their home leagues where it's not like the high stakes experts and all that stuff, where they're still able to get him in the 7th, 8th round because people are just like, I don't know, that guy really didn't do much last year.
Yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. I'm a big Ricky Pearsall fan. I mean, one of us was taking him assuredly on this show when we're
Right.
talking about
Yeah.
mid-round picks. And this is another one we're like looking at how we compare to the consensus. You and I are very high on Ricky Pearsall compared to where most others have him ranked. And um, I want to say, like, I do fully understand why Ricky Pearsall is getting suppressed in rankings right now, because when you look at the data that so many fantasy football analysts look at, Juwan Jennings had a great profile last year. Like, on a per route run basis, he was efficient, he was good, he was drawing targets, he was doing all the things that you want to see. And frankly, Ricky Pearsall's production profile was not great. Like, the usage wasn't great, the efficiency wasn't great. But this is one of those situations. I feel like being a good fantasy football analyst, you have to take in everything. You have to look at the news, you have to look at context, you have to look at film, you have to look at the data, you have to look at so many different things. And this is one where I think the context and the film just vastly overweighs what the analytics are telling us. Like, the fact that he came back from a preseason gunshot wound at all is miraculous. The fact that he was able to be a huge part of the offense by the season's end, That's unheard of. Like, we
Yep.
we don't see guys do this. We see guys miss preseason and miss the early part of their season all the time as rookies, and then just take a 0 that year and try to come back in year 2. This guy, if you go and look at that game against Detroit, he was operating as the wide receiver 1, and so oftentimes in Shanahan's offense, these guys are kind of pigeonholed into one role. Like Brandon Ayuk can only play the X in this offense, where he's running those deep crossers. Very valuable role. We love that. Debo Samuel, when he was there, wasn't doing that as much. He was kind of catching the short, intermediate balls and making plays after
Right.
the catch. And then Juwan Jennings, we saw last year he started to move over into the X a little bit. For the most part, he's been the Y, the flanker in that offense, kind of stretching defenses vertically. Ricky Pearsall can play all three of those roles. So before, the way the team was set up, if they had an injury to one of these wide receivers, everything would kind of unravel because they didn't have guys they could plug in there. Ricky Pearsall could play the X, Y, or the Z in this offense. He can be the deep threat. He can be the guy catching the deep crossers, or he can be the guy that takes an end around, breaks 5 tackles, and scores a 60-yard touchdown. I mean, he is such a versatile piece in this offense. And that's something that I don't think we have seen in this 49ers offense as long as I can remember. So that's what really, really excites me, is that they can just move him around like a queen on a chessboard and allow him to do so many different things.
And I gotta say, man, like I love Ricky Pearsall's talent. Like this was a guy that when and it's gonna sound stupid saying it now, but there's a reason behind it. It was last year looking at the rookies that were coming out. I had Ricky Pearsall one spot ahead of Lad McConkey. And when Ricky Pearsall went in the first round, felt vindicated that the Niners, a smart offense, a smart front offense, saw the same thing I had. We're not going to pay attention to the fact that they also drafted Trey Lance. Let's not do that here. But Ricky Pearsall, man, like we know he has the talent, we know there's the opportunity, and we know this is an offense that can score points. And Dave, what you said like cannot be ignored. It's that he can do everything. So there's not like he's not going to get pigeonholed into that box here. And right now we're actually seeing a discount on this ADP. Like it's
Mhm.
actually dropped a little bit more when you'd expect it to be going the other way around with all the Juwan Jennings stuff. So the ADP dropped. It's starting to creep back up just a very little bit, but this is still a player that we're getting at a discount. And I don't quite understand it. You, me, and Jeff Bell are all three very high on
Shocker.
Ricky Pearsall. Once again, Jeff Bell is 13 spots above consensus. I'm 10 spots above consensus, and you're 9 spots above consensus. So yeah, the three of us are much higher than the field when it comes to Ricky Pearsall.
And the last thing I want to say is like you need to take into consideration where a player is at in their career. And Juwan
Mhm.
Jennings, had a career year last year. I don't want to ignore that, but that was his
It's
fourth
also an
year in
outlier.
the league. And he still didn't even eclipse 1,000 yards. So we're looking at a rookie coming back from an injury who, over the last handful of games, was getting similar usage and production to Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings is a guy who has only been in this system since he came into the league, has a ton of experience, was able to
Yep.
develop over the last 4 years. Ricky Pearsall was just kind of thrown out there midseason saying, like, let's see what this guy can do. And he was unbelievable. And Chris Harris, he and I just had this conversation on his show a couple of weeks ago. And Chris is like, you don't even need to like be a technical film watcher to understand what he's doing. You just watch it. And he is clearly the fastest and the strongest and the most athletic receiver out there. They are obviously going to scheme up touches to get the ball in Ricky Pearsall's hands however they can.
Yeah, I'm looking.
9.91 relative athletic score for those
Yeah.
that wanted to know that. That is since 1987. Our friend Ken Lee Platt, he has charted 3,402 wide receivers coming into the NFL draft. Ricky Pearsall is the 31st most athletic receiver since 1987 to come into the NFL.
There have been a few wide receivers that I've really liked coming out of college, and a lot of them have had good athletic profiles, which I tend to lean on. Ricky Pearsall has been one of them. The other one was Jameson Williams, and I
Yep.
kind of view Ricky Pearsall in a similar light as Jameson Williams last year, a guy who just you've got to put a little bit of context to their early start to their career here, but that the ability is still there. The offense can be very good, and the opportunity is going to be there. So he's a guy you can draft as a wide receiver 4, and he can give you wide receiver 2 upside. So I love that, Dave. I know you do too. All right, let's go to the final round here, round 8 for these mid-round targets. But before we do that, just want to remind everybody we got a bunch of great content over here at Football Guys. On top of the written content, on top of the rankings, everything else that we do here, we've got some fantastic podcasts, and we've got the Dynasty Show with Dave Kluge and Jeff Bell. Who the Jeff Bell? I mean, Jeff's got to start like paying us for every time we mention his name in this episode. It's been like 6 times.
Happy
We
birthday
also
yesterday, by the way.
yeah,
Happy
happy
belated to
birthday,
Jeff
Jeff.
Bell. Yeah.
He's 68 years old now. The Audible as well with Sigmund Bloom and Cecil Lammy. It's been around for 19 years. We're coming up on 20 years for the Audible, which is fantastic. The
We'll be
hot seat
drinking
with
next
Bob.
year.
Yeah, well, I mean, wait, what? No, 21 is drinking, Dave.
Yeah, next
What
year.
country?
Next year,
well,
they'll be 21.
Bob
Yeah.
said they're coming up on 20. The math ain't mathin', brother. We also have the hot seat with Bob Harris, who he does an amazing job bringing on different guests each week. We've got On the Couch with Sigmund Bloom, where he brings on a new guest every week. And then, well, we got 2 more shows here that also bring on new guests every week. And it's the Launchpad with Dave Kluge and the Pretend GM with myself. So you've got so many different styles of shows, tons of content. And if you are a podcast listener or a YouTube watcher, there's no shortage of that content here for you over at Football Guys. So please make sure you're subscribed to all those channels. You can find that here on our YouTube channel or in our Football Guys podcast feed. All right, Dave, let's go down to round 8 for the final 2 players we've got here and talk to us about the player you've got.
Ricky Pierol technically is a round 8 ADP, so I'm going to talk about him all over. No, I'm kidding.
No.
your face,
I was like, what are we doing? I just tuned out of the podcast. What are we doing?
No, Tyrone Tracy. And this is one, I don't want to like get on my soapbox here, but there is just such a huge disconnect often between fantasy football analysts
Can I
and
ask a
fantasy
question
football
before
ADP.
you keep going?
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Who gets on a soapbox?
I think people would like stand on a soapbox.
like a
Like the
thing?
image I've always had in my mind is like 18 or like
Like
What am I
the
thinking?
kids in the middle
Like
of the square,
1600.
like extra, and they'd
That's
stand
what
on it.
see,
and
I was
like,
thinking even before that, like 1600s, like colonial America. I'd imagine some guy would
they
like
would carry
stand
their
up on a
soap in
box
boxes.
and maybe soap is heavy, so I'd imagine that they'd have to have like a sturdy wooden
You're not
box. You know,
bagging
you
it.
can't put you need a sturdy box that if it can hold a bunch of soap, I'm sure it could hold a human. And they'd get up there and they would say Tyrone Tracy is the actual RB1 for the New York Giants, and they'd profess it to the entire town square. That's what I like to think.
We need new terminology. It's been way too long. we need something to get updated.
All right, I'm going to get on my podcast platform that you can find on YouTube and talk about.
There you go. That's how you do it.
But
content creator.
Before I talk about Tyrone Tracy specifically, you know, first of all, I cannot understate the amount of work that our staff puts into these training camp reports. We, assign a different team to a different staffer, and every single staffer spends, I mean, I can't speak for anybody individually. I spend about 8 to 12 hours on my one team that I cover. I listen to podcasts. I read every training camp review I can. I go through all of the beat writers' tweets, and you just try to absorb as much information as possible and then use those sources to write these training camp reports. And that's when you start realizing, like, ADP is wrong about a lot of these players. And one that really surprised me digging through the New York Giants was that Camp Scattaboo, dealing with an injury right now, but even before the injury, had yet to take a single rep with the ones. He couldn't get off the second team. I mean, all of the reports out of New York are that Tyrone Tracy is the clear RB1. Devin Singletary is the RB2, and Camp Scattaboo still has a lot of work. But what happens is people, especially a lot of people who consume fantasy football content, do so on social media. And we saw like a fun little catch and run from Cam Scattaboo. We saw a one-handed catch because even the New York Giants, their social media team, knows that Cam Scattaboo is a fun player. He's got a fun name and he's got funny clips and videos, and he barfed on the sidelines during a bowl game. And like,
that's what fantasy football is about, being funny.
There is something to that though. And I think like people
Yeah.
want to see the rookie succeed, and they see this fun rookie coming into the league, but the reality is he's still got a lot of work to do before he's going to be a guy. And maybe that can blossom throughout training camp. Maybe over the second half of the season, he can kind of find his footing. But right now, all the reports out of New York are that Tyrone Tracy is the clear guy, that he has not struggled with the fumbles and the drops that really plagued his rookie season. And if you just look at the prospect profiles of these guys, Tyrone Tracy passes Cam Scattaboo with flying colors. I mean, similar sizes. Cam Scattaboo is a little bit thicker, but Tyrone Tracy much faster, much more explosive, much more burst. Scattaboo's got the power, and we like that in short yardage situations. But I think this is one where it's just completely wrong. What you see on most platforms is these guys are going in the same round of each other, and oftentimes Cam Scattaboo is getting drafted ahead of Tyrone Tracy. And I've got a huge disparity between my rankings. I mean, I've got Tyrone Tracy as my RB 27. I've got Cam Scadaboo outside of my top 50. I understand that we do see these rookies sometimes come on late in their rookie year, but without a huge change in news coming out of New York right now, fantasy football ADP just has this backfield completely wrong.
Yeah, man, like it's we get the rookie fever, and like I'm one of these people too, because I'm talking about two rookies here today, but I'm doing it with some
And I
tact
talked
and
about a
fine.
rookie too, but we're
Yeah,
talking
like
about like first round rookies. We're not talking about these day three guys that have established vets ahead of them.
and that's it too. And it's also like with Cam Scadaboo, like we knew he was going to have limitations coming into the league. Like there were athletic limitations, there were passing down limitations, and I know people are going to look, and this is where data often lies. People are going to look at the production profile coming out of Arizona State. But that's why I don't like a lot of data coming out of college, because you are typically going to have that causation of like, what is around you? Does Arizona State have weapons to use, or did they need to run everything through Cam Scadaboo? And then people will use that and make a narrative that, well, Cam Scadaboo is the workhorse back that the Giants can then run through. And no, like that's not how that works. He needs to be a better pass blocker. He needs to be a better pass catcher. He needs to be more athletic. Tyrone Tracy's the one out here that's going to be making big plays, and he's familiar with the offense too. Like we forget that these kids do have to, and I say kids because like in NFL terms they have to come in and learn a brand new playbook. And so for Tyrone Tracy to have that advantage of being the more explosive player, the guy who can work passing downs, and the guy who knows the playbook, yeah, I'm gonna take him every single time. I think we got a little, not we, I mean like the royal we, like as a fantasy community, people were ranking Cam Scadaboo a little too high and got over their skis there.
I just want to say, Alfredo, you've got a little gray in your beard. I've got some wrinkles when I
Okay,
smile. We're
okay,
we're,
why does,
we're legally allowed to start calling NFL players kids at this point because we are
oh
we're Geno
no,
Smith age. We are
oh
grizzled vets at this
no,
point. I'm sorry to say
oh my god, I'm gonna be
it.
sick. Dave, I'm gonna be sick. I
One
don't,
thing I wanted to say though, real quickly, just to go
we're
back
one
to like
step
the
closer to death.
well, while you're gathering yourself and trying to hold that back, I'm just going to plug a show that I'm recording tonight with Jeff Bell and Dan Henry that I really recommend checking out. It's going to be audio only on the Dynasty feed, but we are going through these training camp reports that I just said. Like you do the math, 8 to 12 hours per training camp report over 32 teams. Our staff has poured hundreds of hours into writing these training camp reports. And basically, what Dan, Jeff, and I are going to do tonight is look at all of these situations that ADP has wrong. So if you're looking for a way to like quickly leverage off of this news, like another example right now, Roshan Johnson still getting drafted in round 14. Every bit of news coming out of camp is that Kyle Monungai is the wide receiver too there. He's free in the last round of your drafts right now. People
Running
are
back too.
still paying up for Roshan Johnson. So I mean, there are just so many discrepancies right now, like what's actually happening in the real world and people who are anchored to ADP. And now is the
Yeah.
time to start pivoting off of those priors.
I still can't get over that you made fun of my gray beard, but whatever. I'm gonna move
I got
past
some
that.
gray hairs. Yeah, I mean, I keep it this short on the sides for a reason because as soon as I let it grow out, you see all the gray. So I just keep it
My
a
wife's
one on
into
the
it, so
sides.
I'm just embracing it. When I went to go get a haircut the other day, the lady asked me, "Do you want me? Do you want?" Sorry, I'm struggling to say this one because it's really funny. She's like, do you want to get your hair glazed? And I was like, that
Oh.
doesn't mean what you think it means, lady.
Oh man. Yeah, my wife says she likes
Let's
the
not
gray
clip
too.
that one, by the way.
Yeah. My
Let's not.
my wife says she likes the gray. I'm fine with the gray on the sides. It's when I look in the mirror and I've got a gray like on the top of my head that I'm like, "Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. We can do the salt and pepper on the sides, but not up top."
Dude, I will go full Ebenezer Scrooge white hair before I go bald. Like I will take that
It's a good
10
point.
times out of 10.
That is a
10
good
times
point.
out of
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
All right, last player on here that we want to talk about. Both of us have him ranked as the wide receiver 38. We are well above consensus. And guess what? I checked. You, me, and Jeff are all well above consensus and ADP and everything on this player. It's Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And what I did for this exercise is right now the ADP is in round 9. I moved him up to round 8. And to be honest, he's probably going to be going in round 7 in certain drafts. Like just wait for more news to keep coming out. He's been absolutely crushing camp. This is a guy coming out of Ohio State who produced even with other big time stars at Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith, Marvin Harrison Jr., and he was still 1,000-yard receiver pretty much every single year. Now he goes to a Tampa Bay Buccaneers passing offense that gave us two very good fantasy wide receivers last year, But you have Chris Godwin dealing with this injury, and the team is even saying, is like, oh, we think he'll be ready for week 1, but we're not quite sure. And the images coming out is showing Chris Godwin standing with his ankles side by side. I mean, it's like a 1.5x zoom in on the other ankle is what it looks like right now. Like, it does not look great.
Not just the swollen ankle, but also calf atrophy in that same leg. So like calf is
So he
looking
got
small,
fat
ankle's
in the
looking
ankle
big.
and lost the muscle in the calf.
Yeah, not
That's
good.
that's the
Great.
toll of getting
That picture
old.
was from early June, so I mean, a couple months have passed since then, but still
Just
not
saying,
great.
man. Just saying, that's the toll of getting old. You get fat and lose muscle. Chris Godwin, you are not immune to this. But yeah, man. Like, and by the way, Chris Godwin, I really do hope that everything is good with him. But if we are going to be playing fantasy the way we want to, where we want to uh, be able to play for upside and draft for upside and go for guys that can absolutely outkick their ADP and crush where they're being drafted, it's Emeka Egbuka. And we're already hearing all these amazing quotes from even from his quarterback. Baker Mayfield is out here in interviews. He was on the New Heights podcast, the one with Travis and Jason Kelsey, totally unprompted. They were just talking to him like, hey man, how's camp going? And he just goes, Emeka Egbuka is a stud.
An
He's smart.
absolute
He's got
stud.
all absolute stud. He's smart. He's got all the skill sets you can't teach. He's talking about being grounded through the catch and having yak potential out the wazoo because of that. Like, this is a guy who trusts his rookie wide receiver, and that's usually something that is tough to develop that rapport between quarterback and wide receiver. Like, not a lot of people think of this, but wide receivers all run routes differently. They all run them at different speeds. Quarterbacks have to get timings with these players, and that's something like as a Dolphins fan, like I saw it in the first season of Tyreek Hill being on the Dolphins with Tua. He's not a strong arm quarterback. Tyreek's way too fast. The timings were off. This is something where these guys seem to have their timing down. They have a trust in one another. Even other players, Jalen McMillan back in May, saying Igbuka's already knows half the damn playbook. That was in May. For a guy to be that ahead on the playbook, for Sterling Shepard to be calling him a mini Chris Godwin, he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to do all the things that Chris Godwin did last year. And I mean, when we look back at what Godwin was doing last year, Dave, he was first amongst wide receiver in catches, but this was through week 7. Chris Godwin, first amongst wide receivers in catches, second in receiving yards, third in receiving touchdowns, second in PPR points. This was a dude that was absolutely crushing prior to injury. If Emeka Egbuka can be anywhere near that kind of role as a rookie, we're talking about a guy that absolutely crushes his average draft position.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. This is the second time that we've talked about the value of that Chris Godwin role, like we talked about it in regards to Travis Hunter, but Emeka Egbuka could literally step into the Chris Godwin role if he's unable to play there right now. And, there's been a lot of talk about Egbuka being a little bit more versatile than being a slot-only player, like a lot of people imagine that he could be. So maybe we do see him bounce around the formation a little bit, but if the season starts where Mike Evans is playing his typical role as the X, Emeka Egbuka is eating out of the slot, I don't think that they're just going to kick the rookie out for Chris Godwin when he returns. I mean, we've
No,
seen Chris Godwin also has the elasticity to move around the formation. Maybe Jalen McMillan is the one that gets pushed to the wayside, and Godwin moves to that flanker role. Either way, Emeka Egbuka is a first-round pick, super talented, getting rave reviews out of camp so far. Yeah, this is another really, really easy pick. And we didn't talk about him on this show, but Matthew Golden and Emeka Egbuka are usually going very similar to each other in drafts. And I want to try to leave every single draft with one of those two guys, first round picks who could easily walk into a role where they're seeing 100 plus targets this year.
yeah, I think you and I are going to look at this pretty much the same. And I think this is how drafters should be approaching their drafts is once you get into these mid to late rounds, you need to be looking at these rookie wide receivers who can make a big impact on their team and the running backs that are just a play or injury away from having massive contingent upside. And like, that's how you and I have just been drafting all off season. Yesterday in our football guy Stafford draft, that's all it was. It's just get second string running back, guys that are injury away, and rookie wide receivers. And that's how our audience should be doing it.
Absolutely.
Well, we're going to be back again on Thursday. This is going to do it for us today. We're going to be back again on Thursday. We're going to be looking at players that are going in round 9 or later. And honestly, Dave, we have a little bit more freedom here. We can go all the way to the end of the draft if you find a player that you're just really interested in. But those are going to be the players that I think like right here, these are the players that can give you a massive advantage in your league. I think when you find a guy in like round 12 who gives you like round 3 production, that's where you win it. That's where you win absolutely everything is by just getting that diamond in the rough. So we're going to be back again on Thursday with that for myself and Dave. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching or listening all the way through. We'll see you next time. Adios.